Thank you. My name is Evan Sitati. I work for Siana Conservancy as a manager. I've been there for the last 7 years, since 2016. Currently, I'm working remotely from the UK. I'm doing my PhD investigating the livelihood and conservation threats at 2030 and 2060 through scenario modeling. So I'm going to present the practical things that we do at Siana Conservancy, which gives a picture of what other conservancies are doing in the landscape of Mara. So you're most welcome. I'll appreciate to have as many questions as possible at the end of the presentation. So conservancies are, our community owned lands, and they are spread all over Kenya. Currently, we have around 167 conservancies. That was the data as of 2020, but I know there's an increment of around 6 conservancies in Kenya. So in Kenya, we are under the umbrella of Kenya Wildlife Conservancies Association, which is an umbrella of all conservancies in Kenya, and they're the ones who developed this map. So the brown areas are the conservancies, and the green areas are the protected areas. They can be national parks, national reserves, or marine parks and forests. So that's the Mara landscape. The green part is the Masai Mara National Reserve. I don't know which color is that follows green with numbers. Those are the conservancies. And then the brown part is the corridors where wildlife have been roaming, but they are now blocked. Perhaps I'll share that the reason why they're being blocked in the future slides. So there are around 17 conservancies in the Mara. There are new ones which have just joined recently, around 3. They're not included here. And each conservancy has a different model. So when I say a model, is how they do their daily operations and how they have structured their land ownership. So Mara Siana is number 7. It's a little bit tiny conservancy, but I'll explain why. The reason why Mara Siana Conservancy is small is because the landowners demarcated an area where they call a conservancy, where no one can stay, and then they had another portion of land outside the conservancy where they can now stay with their families and do their daily livelihood activities. So when you compare Mara Siana with Nabosho number 18 or Mara North number 14, those are big conservancies. Each landowner was getting around 150 acres. In Nabosho, Motorogi, that's number 6 and number 4, and then number 14 is Mara North. They were getting big portions of 150 acres of land, but they didn't demarcate an area where they call a conservancy. So you are given your entire land, and then you put the entire land into a conservancy. But for Mara Siana, the landowners said we put around 6.5 acres approximately in the conservancy, and then we have 35 acres outside where we can stay with our family. So that's the only difference that we have. And I think all the Rekesi Conservancy are also trying to copy Mara Siana Conservancy. And then there's another conservancy called Orpua, which is coming up with a similar model. The reason being the population is increasing while the land is not, it's constant. And people need land to settle. So they'd rather have an area where it's strictly for conservation, and then they have another area for settling with their families. So we are under the Masai Mara Wildlife Conservancies Association, which is an umbrella of all conservancies in the Masai Mara. We pay the annual membership. That's for all conservancies based on bed occupancy. If Mara Siana camps, which support the conservancy, have like 50 beds, so each bed pays 2,000 Kenya shillings annually to MMWCA. In return, we benefit from trainings, we benefit from fundraising, we benefit from capacity building of the landowners and other projects. So the black line, that's the Tanzanian side. On the lower side, then there's Masai Mara National Reserve, the green. The inner area of the purple line with some bluish is the primary area where MMWCA has concentrated. And then the outer line, which is still purple in color, that's the area where they are envisioning to also create some conservancies as part of creating corridors. Because one of the things that's threatening conservation in the Mara is closure of corridors because of land use changes from being communal to private. I think Olderekesi and Loita are the only areas that are not yet demarcated, but the process is on. In fact, Loita is halfway. Olderekesi, they will have done their demarcation, but because of court cases, I think the process is still on hold. But very soon they'll demarcate the area. So once you get your title, then you're entitled to use your land for whatever reasons you want. And some of the people put up electric fences, and those fences are directly in wildlife corridor areas where species maybe were using to access some historical resources like salt licks, water, and pasture. So this has constrained a lot of wildlife movements, especially for elephants that roam from Serengeti to Mara to Siana or to conservancies. And if you look in the map, there's an area just near Majimoto. It's encircled with the purple line. That initially that was a wild-beast migration area, but because of the changes in land tenure system, the area is completely fenced. So wildebeest no longer stay there, and they have moved down to Olaro and Siana and other places like Olkinya and Aposho. So the size of landowners for Mara Siana Conservancy around 1435 or 1400. That's the core area where the landowners decided that this is our protected area, we cannot stay there, and our core business is just wildlife-based tourism. And then we have 490 landowners where, as I said, these are elephant corridors because elephant roam far and wide. And these areas still have acacia species and water points which elephants use, especially during the dry season. And it's also an area that connects Siana to Loita and Olkinyei. So that's why we decided to lease around 490 acres, which is around 14,300 acres, because it's a big parcels of land of 35 acres compared to the inside core area of the conservancy, which is approximately 6.5 acres. So we started in 2016, and it's a group conservancy, not a community conservancy. It's a group conservancy because these are people with different title deeds. So they consolidate their land together to form a conservancy. If you go to Samburu, that's a community conservancy because land is not demarcated and it's free for all. So that's the difference. And then we have private conservancies as well, like Olpajeta, Oljoki, and the others. So the purpose of establishing Mara Siana Conservancy was to it's part of their culture, Maasai culture, to, you cannot separate a Maasai from owning cows. And one of the things that are really stressing the Maasai is pasture availability, especially during the dry season. So most conservancies were established to create a model where the landowners can access pasture all year round without any stress. And of course, the core business, the second income generating activity for the Maasai in the Mara is tourism, because livestock is number one, then tourism. So that's why they wanted to benefit from wildlife resources, which is in abundance. And of course, land in Mara was, degraded because of overgrazing. And as such, we have a lot of invasive species. And conservancies have proved that if you close an area for a while, then the land rehabilitates itself naturally through natural reseeding. So, and once you put your land under the conservancy, then you're pretty sure you're not going to sell that land for that period. You've leased that land to the conservancy. So it's security for land as well. So that's the elephant corridor. The black line is the conservancy. And then the gray areas, those are the areas we are leasing as elephant corridor. Olaro Conservancy and the Siana Conservancy, those are just same members. It's only that when we were trying to operationalize the entire area, there's an investor, a conservation investor, who came and leased that land of Olaro, around 14,000 acres, and left the rest of the area. And now the investors is no longer there, and now we are back in Olaro, and now we are leasing the entire Siana ecosystem. So the map on the left, I don't know on the screen whether it's left or right, it shows the grazing blocks. So for Siana, because the landowners demarcated an area where they call a conservancy, we don't allow cows all year round. We only allow cows during certain times of the year. We allow cows in January because it's the dry season and tourism is low. We allow in cows in May before the wild beast migration comes in to consume all the grass for the landowners' cows. We allow cows inside in September, where when tourism numbers are also low. And then the landowners can come and request other times where we can negotiate and allow cows inside. So we have zoned the area into grazing blocks where each of the villages can access the area without mixing with cows from the neighboring villages. And this reduces disease transmission and also conflicts. Siana is a bit hilly and forested, and therefore when you send young boys to come, they start playing, then cows get eaten, they get lost. So that's why we've zoned the area so that cows don't mix, and each area have to manage their own grass. When it gets finished, then you have to drive your cows out of the conservancy. The map on the right, I think it's showing the elephant movements from the Masai Mara National Reserve to Siana, to Nashulai, Olaro, and other areas. Siana is a critical ecosystem. Maybe I just want to explain based on that map. Siana is a very critical ecosystem because elephants coming from the Serengeti to Mara, the first concerns they hit on the eastern side is Siana. Siana has a lot of acacia species, like a dryland forest, which the elephant love a lot, especially during the dry season when the grass is in limited numbers. So That's why we have a lot of elephants in Siana. And during the dry season, that's when we experience a lot of conflict in Siana. One, the population is high because around the landowners, by the time they were giving the land in Siana, they were around 3,500. That's all around Siana. Combined landowners were 3,500. Circumcised men. And that was in 2009. And now the numbers has increased. So it's a populated area with the human. And then elephants also, numbers are increasing. The last census was around 2,500 elephants. So conflicts are very prime, especially during the dry season, because that's the time elephants are out in search of pasture, and they feed on acacia species, and they roam far away to places where people have settled. Like now, the elephants are also out because of the wildebeest migration. So most of the resident species, including the resident wildebeest and zebras and elephants, have moved to conservancies. So we anticipate to start receiving a lot of conflict even during this time. During the wet season, we get conflicts from lions because lions don't like tall grass, which is mostly wet. So from March, April, May, we receive a lot of conflict from lions, wild dogs, and hyenas. So that's how the season. That's how we operate. So after every 3 years, the landowners can hold an election, and a person is eligible to go for 2 terms. That's 3 years each, which makes it 6. Then the elected committee now elects the officials, that the chairman, the treasurer, the secretary. Now the elected officials, the 3 elected officials are the ones who go to the board of the conservancy. The board of the conservancy is comprised of tourism partners who support the conservancy, and then the 3 landowners. So mostly we make decisions based on consensus because we only have 2 tourism partners supporting the conservancy for now. Perhaps when there will be many, then we'll maybe do the voting system. Now the board is the one that makes policies for the conservancy because they have to agree, the TPs have to agree with the landowners to pass some of the resolutions. So that's how the governance structure is set, and even for most of the conservancies. So after the board, the committee has been elected, they're taken on training so that to avoid conflict of interest, especially between them and the management team. So the photo on the left, that's on my side, is the elected board are now being trained. On the right, we are doing the wildlife conservation scheme because it's not compensation. Compensation is a bit expensive. We use offset or consolation. So where we pay at a market rate the landowners who lose their livestock from predation. And that's just one of the villages in Ngoilale where communities are having a meeting and have come to receive their money. Those are the women now speaking in AGMs. We are encouraging women, Maasai women, to come for these meetings so that they can voice their agenda, they can voice their issues, they can also present some of the projects which they want to be part of. Because land issues in Mara are only male-based, and we are trying to encourage women to participate because men will only give their agenda based on male, ideas. And the other side, they're making a voting by acclamation. So we pay the leases. Siana, we pay around 34 to 35 million Kenya shillings. in terms of leases every year. We have conservation fee. So if you come to Siana and spend at Entomoto or Spirit, which supports the Conservancy, $20 per night per person goes to the kitty of the community. We have also just started thinking of wildlife credits, and we are in partnership with other partners from Namibia, because Mara Siana is supported by WWF. So we're working with WWF Namibia to see how we can start the wildlife credits. And one of the species we have been told is the wild dog. If we can prove that wild dogs are increasing in number, then we qualify for credit, just like carbon credit. If an elephant is speared and people don't, so if an elephant causes an atrocity and people don't retaliate, then they qualify for credit. So those are some of the things we are thinking, and the project will start next month. Then we have carbon credit through Masai Mara Wildlife Conservancy Association. Carbon credit is one of the financing models in conservation areas like in Taita, and Mara has a potential of being part of this carbon credit initiative. We also fatten a livestock for sale. This is something that we just started with 20 steers, where we fatten and then sell to make more money for the Conservancy. Honey production. Recently, WWF I think bought around 500 beehives and gave to the landowners to produce honey. And then because there's an already existing market in the lodges in the Mara, so there's what they just need is the production link and marketing to the camps. Tourism facilities, they pay the leases, and Entomoto and Spirit pay an annual lease of around 6 million every year, in addition to the conservation fee, which depends on bed occupancy. We also brand Conservancy merchandise and sell to the guests. We have volunteer programs where if someone is retired or is on leave and wants to come and contribute to conservation, then we offer him a place to stay with us and pay something small. This is the area where we also allow students from overseas to come and do their research and volunteer as well. So the other thing that's coming up quickly is the milk business, where women can now, take their milk to a collection point and then earn money at the end of the month. It's something that's new from 2020. And it started once when the road from Narok to Sekenani was tarmacked. So it allowed milk business people from Nairobi and other areas to come and buy milk from Mara. So the slide just shows how we've been financing the leases over time. I've not included for 2020 and 2021 because at that time we were, sorry, I have some cold. We were in COVID period and we were basically supported by WWF, who paid to a tune of around 33 million Kenya shillings. But we're anticipating that the tourism numbers are now looking good, and maybe from this year we'll have some numbers to report from Entomoto and Spirit as well. So the wild dog is one of the species that is of interest to conservationists. The numbers went down in early 90s because of rabies, and they're now slowly coming up. And Siana, Pardamat Conservancy, Olderkesi, Olkinyei are some of the conservancies that have been citing these wild dogs. Elephants is a keystone species for most partners, and there are many in Siana, and that's why many conservation partners are of interest in Siana, because they want that area to remain as open as possible to allow free movement of wildlife. especially during the dry season. The human wildlife conflict is a major thing, either inside a homestead or outside. And therefore we do some consolation, and we're also thinking of doing the wall of credit by providing people like this with improved sheep pens or cow pens to reduce the predation from wildlife species. So that's one of the improved cattle shed which we've done for the one of the homestead just adjacent to the conservancy. The hills you are seeing, that's the conservancy. So this is the first homestead just after the conservancy. That's an elephant that is wounded. I think it either fell down or it was scared by someone. Then while running, it fell on a rock. Then some part of the skin was peeled off. So the human wildlife conflict is very common, especially among the elephants in Siana. So we have a wildlife security team. We operate between 8 and 5, but we sometimes go after a night if the situation allows. We have the environmental education schools and churches around the conservancy just to inculcate the conservancy ethos among the upcoming scholars and children and even the parents in the villages. Then we also starting in fact we've just started buying land. So if you want to sell your land in the conservancy, we have developed a trust which can buy that land. We first give an opportunity to any landowner to buy that land. If there's no landowner within Siana who can buy that land, then the trust buys. What we want to is to reduce someone coming from Nairobi buys land in the conservancy, and then the next thing you do is fence that land. So we want to buy as much land as possible for any willing seller inside the conservancy, not outside, just inside the conservancy. So the conservancy also does a lot of water projects and offer around 1 million bursaries every year to school-going children for the landowners around the conservancy. So I told you we have the livestock fattening, and this cuts across even to other conservancies, especially Pardamat, and even Mara North. I know MMWC have also purchased some bulls. That's the Saiwal and Borani bulls to come and improve the cattle breed for some of the landowners. So each conservancy has been given 2 bulls to improve the quality of livestock for the landowners. Beekeeping is coming up quickly. Women empowerment. We are currently thinking of empowering women through projects which they suggest themselves. As I told you, the Maasai culture is staunch, and it's now that a lot of people are taking their kids to school, so people are getting enlightened, and we want to support them as much as possible. So there's a project where we are aiding someone to produce reusable sanitary pads. Others are thinking about poultry farming. Others want just to do business. So we are thinking of how we can finance some of these women to at least earn a living. We also support the Ngoilale Health Center. Ngoilale is one of the peri-urban centers just near Siana, and we support them, the medical center, with facilities, medicine, motorbikes, so that they can attend to the locals with ease. and we link that to conservation for people to appreciate the work of conservation. In October, we are starting to install the energy-saving cook stoves in landowners' houses to reduce the frequency of going to the conservancy to look for firewood, because they meet the wildlife, then they endanger their lives, and also save their time to do other activities for their families. So now I'll just use the pictures. This is one of the schools that has been brought to the conservancy to see the wildlife and appreciate. We also encourage the rangers, because they come from the village, to go and interact with the students, show them binoculars and other gadgets which we use in the conservancy. There's a film being showed in a church, one of the churches, and there's a student receiving bursary at the conservancy office. Those are some of the cattle. I think they were just still new when we bought them, and we want to. I think they have now been sold. So once you sell, you fatten, you sell, and then replenish the steer. So we started with 20. I think 2 were eaten by lions, so the remaining 18. And I think they've been sold. So I'll ask how much they have fetched, and they have to replenish them with new ones. We work closely with the the Masai Mara Conservation Predator Project to provide predator-proof bomas to landowners, like the one you're seeing with cattle inside. And this is supported through WWF. So the other initiatives were mainly to, reduce predation inside the homesteads. But now we are thinking on how can we reduce now predation outside, and that's why we are painting the cows on cattle butts, so that when a lion sees the cow, then he sees like a cow is already seeing him or her, and the rate of predation goes down. We tried once, and there was a day a lion tried to chase a herd of cows, and they didn't have a specific cow to attack. So this idea or concept works. That's the number of cows you're seeing there. The many cows you're seeing is in the conservancy. We had just opened it for grazing. And here people are receiving their consolation from wildlife predation. The house you're seeing is for volunteers. So if there are any volunteers whom we know and want to come and spend some time with the Conservancy, they can get in touch. They can give them a rough estimate on how much to pay. Then they can come and spend in the Conservancy, do their research, or patrol the rangers, or contribute their skills to the Conservancy. It can be in IT, finance, security, and other things. So we also train rangers in other environmental activities. The picture seeing, I think the rangers are being showed how to make the briquettes for cooking using paper. So family planning, as I told you, population has an impact on conservation, and family planning is an activity or is a concept that's not enshrined in Maasai culture, and we are slowly trying to bring on board women to start, embracing family planning slowly. So we start with the women, and then we hold different meetings with men and women. Slowly, they're accepting. So the men women you're seeing on the left, I think that's the third meeting. And this one is the first meeting. You can see how few there are. But if you call for the next meeting, then the number keeps on increasing. And after the meeting, some of them ask the doctors how they can access some of these family planning methods. So we're just measuring the firewood for the landowners. So what we found out is that like these school-going children, they come twice to the conservancy to collect firewood. And since they're teenagers, they carry around maximum around 25, 26 kilos, while elderly women carry up to 50 kilos in a day, and then they go for around 5 kilometers, 3 to 5 kilometers to their homesteads. So we want to reduce this by providing them with the energy cook stoves that can use less firewood and retain as much heat as possible for their houses. So Entumoto has done a lot. It has a rescue center for girls who run from FGM, female genital mutilation among the Maasai, which is slowly now going down. So they have some guests who support around 60 girls in one of the nearby schools in the conservancy. And that's just one of the library blocks that were constructed by Entumoto for Siana boarding primary. So we are getting support from WWF. They pay the salaries, food rations, medical cover, equipment, and everything. They build conservancy staff, accommodation facilities in the conservancy. They've provided vehicles. They pay the leases. They pay. They've done the mapping, and they've also introduced other projects like holistic project, where we want to start rehabilitating the land outside the conservancy because it's mostly degraded. So we are working closely with the landowners who have leased with Mara Siana Conservancy in the elephant corridor to see how we can assist in planning their grazing to have some grass left for use during the dry season. So as a conservancy, we have not marketed the conservancies in Mara as much. And we have told MMWCA and is working on their website on how they can market a conservancy. So on the click of a button, if you click on Siana, then it can provide for you the entire information on maybe the conservancy website. Tourism is a fragile business. It was really affected by COVID. It's now slowly coming up. I know we were sustained by WWF and MMWCA, and even the government paid salaries for rangers for 1 year, which was a good gesture. We are now receiving a lot of deaths from species, especially giraffes and the elephants, unknown causes, apart from the human-wildlife conflict, which is increasing, and it's a bit worrying. Climate change is forcing species to roam far and wide, and just aggravating the human-wildlife conflict. We have limited funding because more people want to lease more land to the conservancy to open the entire area for conservation, especially the wildlife corridors. The more population is increasing, the more land is being fragmented. Some people also just want to sell land. They see conservation as a business that gives them small money. During the high season, there's a lot of animal harassment, but not inside the conservancy. Along the highways, where sometimes even you see the road kills, or inside the national reserve. Solid waste management, especially along the highways, is a problem. And we need someone to advise the conservancy on potential enterprises that we can pursue to generate more resources. So cattle densities is a problem, and it endangers the survival of conservancies. So the red area, those are the areas with high cattle densities. That's Pardamat, Olare Motorogi. The reason being they can easily access the national reserve for grazing at night. For goats and sheep, you can see Olderkesi, the other side, on the right-hand side. That's all. Olderkesi, yeah, that's Olderkesi. You can see that's the area with the highest number of sheep and goats, and it's not far from Siana. So we're anticipating that maybe because the Maasais are now use the sheep and goats as their, they call them the ATMs. You can easily trade with sheep and goats than cows. So they're really, really investing in goats and sheep. And if there are many, then they are detrimental to the ecosystem, especially the sheep. Those are the fences. As of 2020, how they have, been coming up. And you can imagine the numbers are increasing daily, daily, daily. So those are some of the fences are now, some of them are in critical wildlife habitats. And that's why Mara Siana is trying to, as much as possible, to lease most of the land surrounding the conservancy to create more space for wildlife. That photo, I think it was just sent to me 2 weeks ago. That's an elephant that's being treated from an arrow wound. The other one had died from natural causes. That one, I think, was a spear. Natural causes, especially from male giraffes, which is, becoming an issue for us. So KWS is on the ground and they're trying to do the investigation to see what's happening, because it's only male giraffe. And those are the partners supporting the Mara Siana Conservancy. Thank you. I think that's my last slide.
Thank you so much, Anders.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is very informative. That's a lot of work is going to all of this.
Yeah.
And thank you for doing this presentation, even though you're not feeling very well. We really appreciate it. So I'm now going to open the floor. I have a question though. Actually, I have 3 questions. I'm going to start with the first one. Now in South Africa in August, we're celebrating Women's Month. So I would like to know from you, how has female leadership in Kenya influenced management?
Yeah. In Kenya, once the constitution was passed we have a new constitution that was passed in 2010. And the constitution explicitly says in any role or leadership or job, there must be at least a third of either gender.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So it's in law, and that's why there are some seats specifically designed for women, even in parliament.
Yeah.
They don't even go for elections, and there are some seats that are only meant for women to go for elections. Currently, we are having elections on the 9th of August.
Yeah.
This year. Yeah. And if you see one of the running mates for one of the presidential candidates is a woman. Yeah. So things are really changing in Kenya. Yeah. Especially in places where women are, empowered, they've gone to school, they're really, really participating in some of this politics.
I can see by the way you speak, you're very proud of that. And I am too. And I think it's very poetic knowing that in the elephants, in elephant populations, there's usually a female leader as well.
Yes.
So there's a poetry to that. Okay, so there's a question. There's a question from Margaret. She says, how do you manage to work with the community towards the fattening of cattle, since having large herds is a culture? It's in the chat.
Okay, there are 2 things. I'll give based on or 3. One is Pardamat. I'll give a case of Pardamat, and then Mara North, and then Siana. So what Pardamat have done, Pardamat is a heavily settled area, and therefore, no one is willing to put a high-end lodge there to attract guests. So what they've done is they engage in cattle fattening. So cattle fattening, I might have 3, maybe you have 2, someone has, 6. You make a herd of around 300 to 400. You bring them in the conservancy. After some time, if you feel the cow has gained a lot of weight, then you can sell it. Then you pay a fee to the conservancy, a small fee. Now for Mara North is a heavily populated area with cows. So what they're thinking is to start giving out cards to landowners. So Evans, if I have 800 cows, I'll only be allowed to have like 10 to bring them in the conservancy as a way to force the Maasai start reducing the numbers, because they have to stay with the, on how things are changing. And if for Siana is the model is a bit different, because we don't allow cows all year round. We only allow them during specific periods of time, and that's why the Conservancy had is at the chairman of the landowners committee, and it can only access the Conservancy. That's the herd we can allow, but the landowners are not allowed to bring in cows anytime they want. However, just to also add to Margaret, I know Margaret, she's a friend of mine. We have penalties. If you become notorious, then you might lose your lease. Yeah. So there are penalties imposed. The more frequent you bring your cows, the more highly that you not receive a lease.
Yeah. Okay, I see what you mean. It's like a negative reinforcement in that.
Yeah.
I think, Margaret, that answered your question. All right, and then there's from Milka Bonnet. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Okay, Margaret's giving the thumbs up. She says, thank you for the informative session. And she's interested in the death of the male giraffe, which he or she Milka would be following up on. Friend of yours as well?
Yeah, she can get it from Elephant Aware. I think Ginny the last time gave some presentation from Elephant Aware.
Okay.
They're the partners whom we are working with, and they have been following the giraffes and elephants for a long time. So she can get in touch with Elephant Aware, then they can give her that data.
Do you have any thoughts on what it might be? Parasite, maybe.
Sorry, Elephant Aware.
No, the giraffe deaths.
Not really, because we've been monitoring the giraffes for the last. We've started receiving or seeing that trend for the last 2 months, and we've lost around maybe 7 giraffes.
Oh.
Yeah, only male giraffes.
Yeah.
But if she wants a trend of how giraffes have been dying, then she can just Google Elephant Aware and then request for some data. There's a lady called Jeannie Cowell. I think she made a presentation. She's the one who gave my email to what's her name? The one who was. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she can get that data.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let's just go have a look. Might be a parasite.
Yeah.
Then I have another question. Now, because I was recently working with doing research on forest elephants. Now, in Congo, okay, this is now the forest elephants. In Congo, they're referred to as mega gardeners because they're very important for seed dispersal. So you know what they consume and then what they let out, And like you said, the elephants are keystone there.
Yeah.
So would the fences not influence dispersal in any way? It might be different for the savanna elephants.
No, the fences are really influencing how elephants are migrating. In the future, they might be forced to move to Serengeti more because elephants are also sensitive. Once they know that there's a place where they are constantly being injured, then they can migrate to other areas. So that's what we're envisioning. The numbers will not change much, but the area will continue constraining for them to access some of the resources, and that will accelerate human-wildlife conflict. So fences have really, really disrupted elephant movements. That's what I can say for sure. For instance, putting up an electric fence on a 35-acre land, it costs you around 350,000 Kenya shillings, which is a lot of money. So if an elephant comes overnight to pull it down, you get angry and then you spear it.
Yeah.
Because the government doesn't compensate, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are some of the things we are trying to see. Yeah. We lease land and then we pull down the fence. We lease your land, we pull down your fence to rid that conflict, and then you get other benefits. If there are any improved breeds of cows which you are giving out, then you are eligible to get. We can do for you water harvesting system on your house and other things. So we attach that to a lot of other benefits which come from the conservancy.
This is always sticky, no? It's always challenges and
But elephants' numbers have also been growing up, and they're really, really destroying the trees. And
that's good news.
Yeah, and in this area where climate change, especially the droughts, are real, getting a generation of those trees is a nightmare. It will take quite some time.
No, but that's good news, because nowadays all you hear is extinction or decline. Exactly. So that's really something to be proud of.
Evans, I would just like to ask, you described the system of cattle grazing with the communities, and you went into a little bit further depth. How long has it been running? And do you feel that in terms of the ecological management, is it overall beneficial? Are you happy on that side? Are the communities happy with it? I'm just interested to learn more about that.
Yeah, it's a bit complicated when you're dealing with the Maasai. So I'll give an example of Nabosho and Mara North, and perhaps Olare Matorogi, that have very expansive conservancies of around 60,000 acres of land. So they have zoned the conservancy into different zones or blocks, and they use the cut lines to mark the boundaries. So cows can only access that area when it's open. And the conservancy management controls and is the one that gives a directive on which area and which season that cows can access some of the areas. However, tourism has been in conservancy has been doing well. And every time the Maasais have been receiving money, what they think is just to increase the number of cows. So there are some conservancies which, if you see the ecosystem, it's like overgrazed. Yeah.
It's a difficult one.
It's very difficult. But the Siana model is a bit safe because the last time we had a drought, it was from September last year to January. We didn't open. In fact, the landowners said don't open. But other conservancies work. All of them were overgrazed. Okay. The reason being, so it's a very tricky thing, but the Maasais will just get to learn on how they have to change over time. It has been very difficult for them to reduce the number of cows. I've posed this question to them several times. I've been asked by the donors. It's very difficult. And they tell you it's very difficult. That's a tricky thing.
Yeah, I mean, cattle farming, I mean, we have several cultural groups in South Africa where it's almost part of the culture as well. So I see with the education initiatives that you're launching, you're sort of looking into poultry farming and things like that. There's no move to shift over to another form of farming that's a bit less land intensive.
In Kenya, it's a bit, especially for Mara, it's a bit difficult because it's not fenced.
Okay.
It's an open area. It's not fenced,
yeah.
And I think that's the only area where most of the black rhinos are in a free ranging mode.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, introducing other economic activities apart from conservation might be a little bit tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from maybe using the available species to, generate resources. Like there's a tree which someone told me that's what they use in the US to produce this fragrance. So we are trying to see how we can maybe start, using that tree instead of people planting tomatoes, spraying the tomato, then elephants come to it at night, then they die. So we are looking at all options to tap in most of the existing resources to generate money for the community. But the ultimate thing is it has to have a minimum negative impact to the environment.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the tricky bit to get maximum benefit for the community and at the same time minimum impact.
Exactly. So beekeeping is a new thing for the Maasai. The thing is, how hygienic is it? So that's a question mark, because the market is there. The hotels are many. We have more than 200 hotels in Mara. But how hygienic are they? Beef trade, it has to be a whole chain as well. People are buying these cows from Mara to Nairobi. They slaughter them, bring back the meat to the hotels. Why don't we just have a slaughterhouse that can process meat in Mara? It will really, really assist the Maasai to offset some of their cows. Yeah, we have to think along these lines, where we have a value chain for milk, honey, and beef in the Mara.
Yeah, I must say I'm really impressed with the way of all the variety of income streams that you are looking at in your reserve. I mean, there are so many reserves where the one and only income stream is tourism, and the sustainability of that has clearly been shown to be problematic.
Yeah,
perhaps for the first time for some people, but it might not be the last time.
No, it's not sustainable. After COVID, yeah, we just have to think outside the box to generate more resources. Definitely. Just in case, yeah.
Definitely. And you'll benefit from it. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Aisha, thank you very much.
Thanks, Evans.
Thank you.
Evans, I just want to mention later in the year, we will be running a series on farming alongside and in harmony with wildlife. And we'll start with the Southern African region, and then we'll move on to the East Africa and sort of take a little bit of a tour through Africa with different sessions on every. So please, when the Southern African discussion is on, please watch that as well. Because you might find interesting, it would be interesting, there could be hybrids coming out of these different ideas.
Yeah. So yeah, can I answer Margaret's question? She's asking,
sure, go for it.
Yeah, so currently we, during the COVID period, we were mostly donor dependent, and we want to change the model completely to generate more resources. One is we are expanding the area for tourism. and therefore increasing revenue from $40 to around $120. So, and then the second thing is there's an area that needs to be tapped, and we are inviting people to put their high-end lodges. We have a management plan that strictly considers the environment. So anyone who is willing to come and put up a lodge must follow that management plan rules. So we want to build 2 more lodges. So we invite a partner to show him a place, then he can put up a nice high-end lodge to generate more resources for the landowners. And therefore, when the cattle fattening picks up, when the wildlife credit and carbon credit, which they have already done the feasibility study, starts, we will be financially sufficient for sure. Yeah.
Thank you, Aisha. I think if there are no further questions, we can release Evans. We've been busy for more than an hour now.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. We will share this on YouTube, and looking forward to all the students who will benefit from this.